We have a great guest tonight and one of our favorites from Bleeding Green Nation, Brandon Lee Gowton. He'll be talking to us about all that and Eagles talk and some Sixers talk as well. I can't wait to get BLG's take on Jeffrey Lurie's presser from last week.
We have no shortage of questions for Brandon, Bill, including how wild has his beard gotten since we last saw him back in mid-September. Remember, it was like about 5 inches long. Let's see if how he's doing with that right now. Let's bring him on, shall we? Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Here it is.
The new look, or the old look, I guess.
Yeah, looks good, man.
Hey, Brandon, welcome back to
you.
Philly Pressbox Radio, my friend.
Thanks for having me, guys. Pleasure to be here, as always.
All right, thanks for
talk about
tidying yourself up. You look good, Brandon. All right, let's get to it. So much to discuss, and we have to talk first, I guess, about the search for a new head coach, Brandon. I think they've interviewed pretty much everybody except the three of us, maybe. What type of coach do Jeff and Howie want, and is Josh McDaniels the front runner or not?
He might be at this point, and I take a heavy sigh because there's reason to be skeptical about that. I think it's kind of crazy, the situation the Eagles are in. I think, talk that they didn't really expect to be having a coaching search fully after the season. So, they're interviewing a lot of candidates. I do think Josh McDaniels is liked there. I think it sounds like Howie Roseman likes him a lot. There's reason to like him in terms of you see the Patriots' success on offense, and if you're just looking at the numbers, it looks pretty good. But when you add in the context of a guy who, spurned the Colts or backed out of the job that he was going to take there, and obviously had a lot of failures in Denver. He went like 11-19 there, and alienated his starting quarterback immediately, and there was a lot of issues there. There's a lot of reason to be concerned. So. I think he might be the guy. Nick Sirianni is kind of coming on here too. The Eagles interviewed the Colts offensive coordinator recently. And I think the way I think about that is, they couldn't hire Andy Reid again. So they got Doug Peterson back in 2016. And now it might be a case of they can't get Frank Reich. So they're just going to get the next closest thing, which would be Nick Sirianni.
What about Eric Bieniemy? Is he going to get in the mix here? Andy gave some positive words for him yesterday. Are they waiting until the Chiefs get to a bye week if they continue on playing, or where's Bieniemy stand in this?
Yeah, for as popular as a name as he is, it doesn't seem like there's any serious interest yet. There was an NFL Network report that they were going to request an interview, but so far there hasn't been any indication that they've actually done that. And as we know, he can't actually interview with the Eagles unless the Chiefs, give him permission. But even then, it would still be a virtual interview, wouldn't be allowed to be in person yet. So since there's been no buzz on that front, I'm guessing he's really not so much on the Eagles' radar.
Well, you heard Bill mention the Jeff Lurie presser from a little over a week ago. It was kind of weird. I mean, how dysfunctional are the Eagles right now? Because they certainly sounded dysfunctional.
The biggest thing that stood out to me was just like the lack of accountability. It's just like, you know what? We're doing great here. 35 wins in the last 3 years before this one. Everything. We know what we're doing. Trust us. It was a bizarre press conference, I think, in terms of misplaced confidence is how I'd put it. It wasn't very satisfying. I think to a lot of fans who have been frustrated. And not that it's going to be easy to placate fans, after a down season, but still, I didn't come away from that press conference feeling encouraged about where the direction of this team is moving in.
Yeah. Did the way things all unfolded with Doug Peterson and the Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts, whatever that's actually in this mix or what? What's your take on that? Did you expect this to happen with Peterson this quick? And was it quarterback related, or was it just philosophy related, which is what Lurie made it sound like to me?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different factors here. I think you look at the proposed changes, that Doug reported, rumoredly, that was put out there, and they didn't really seem all that convincing in terms of promoting Press Taylor to offensive coordinator and bringing back Corey Unlin potentially as your defensive coordinator. Just seemed like not the most inspiring hires necessarily. So I kind of get it from that perspective. I also think it's absolutely relevant that we saw reports coming out a couple weeks before the end of the season that Carson Wentz wanted to be traded And all of a sudden, Doug Peterson gets fired, and the reports are coming out that actually they want Carson Wentz to be the quarterback here, and that Carson Wentz, there's a greater chance of him being this team's quarterback with Peterson gone. I don't know it was as direct of a one-to-one. It was like either Doug or Carson, and that's what the decision came down to. I don't think it's quite that simple. Again, I think other factors at play, but it was a factor. It's not a factor.
Well, on that front, Carson Wentz, Jeff McClain from the Inquirer over the weekend wrote an interesting story elaborating on some of the things we've heard occasionally over the last year or two, that maybe Carson Wentz isn't the great guy we first thought he was, that he alienates some teammates, that he can be tough to coach. What can you tell us about all of that? And does that make it more likely that he'll be back, or more likely that they're going to try to trade him?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're looking at his trade value right now, it doesn't feel like it's super high coming off this terrible season, then a report like that. I mean, look, we've heard this stuff about him going back to 2019, January 2019, when that first Philly Voice story came out. Mm-hmm. And speaking of that story, I had Joe Santoliquito on BGN Radio this year, back in September, way before Carson Wentz even started struggling. So this wasn't agenda-driven or anything. We had a conversation because I kind of had heard from him about areas that Carson Wentz had progressed in terms of being a leader. So we talked about that, but we also talked about where he kind of still needs to grow. And at the time, one of the things we talked about was Carson Wentz really not being coachable and having too much influence over the offense in terms of being able to dictate the offense at the line of scrimmage and not fully, giving the coaching staff maybe enough trust and allowing them to kind of do what they need to do to coach the team and him execute it as much. So I definitely think it's nice to say, in theory, the Eagles just need to fix Carson Wentz. And yeah, that would be great. And I agree in theory, and I'd like to see that happen. But I don't know how realistic that is if Carson Wentz isn't going to look inward and realize he needs fixing. Because by all indications to this point, I'm not seeing that he's been humbled by his benching. I'm seeing that he doesn't think he should have been benched, because apparently in that story you referenced, he went to Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, and he complained that he got benched. So that's just not encouraging to me.
Well, Brandon, you do a lot of interviews and you write a lot of stuff. And I guess the thing that troubles me about the McClain article is unnamed sources. Unnamed sources. You know what? I can sit here and write a story, too, of unnamed sources and make it read anything I want. That troubles me. What do the guys that you interview a lot, do they say, hey, we can talk, but leave me out of this? I mean, it just bothers me.
Yeah, I get that. I think so. Where it comes from, I think in part, is that there's a fear of retribution, especially when you're looking at the subject matter here. Like Carson Wentz clearly has a lot of power and influence in this organization. So if you speak out against him, I don't think you're going to end up in a good spot. I mean, I think we saw Doug Peterson in some way or another kind of speak out against Carson Wentz, or maybe not with his words, but with his actions in terms of benching him and whatnot. And, he's not here anymore. So I think there's absolutely a fear of retribution when it comes to that stuff, and kind of players or coaches wanting to say things anonymously. I think sometimes too, not with just the intent of trashing a guy, but kind of hoping it'll spark change once it gets out there.
Speaking of guys, not coming back, we don't know about Carson Wentz yet, but there's going to be a lot of changes on this roster going into next season. We know that. Give me some names. I mean, is there any chance Alshon Jeffrey is back? Deshaun Jackson, please tell me he's not coming back. Jason Peters wants to play another year. He better not be back. Who will definitely be gone from this roster?
I mean, I those guys better all be gone. I think you nailed it. I mean, it's weird because for, as bad of a season as the team had, in any kind of given situation, you would think, there's going to be a lot of change. And I think there will be change. Obviously, there's going to be a new coaching staff. There are going to be some tweaks here. But when we look at where they are financially, and overthecap.com did a study on this earlier in the season, like they kind of ranked all the rosters in terms of flexibility. And the Eagles are at the bottom of the list. Like they're committed. They have a lot of money committed to these players. It's not like they can make sweeping changes across the board and totally gut this roster. I mean, they're actually going to have to give more money. They're not necessarily more money, but they're going to have to restructure some of these contracts, like a Brandon Graham, for example, or even a Darius Slay. Some of the older players on their team just to get under the cap this year. So it's not a great spot. But I think, the obvious guys like Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Jason Peters, like you mentioned, and part of me believes, like, I can't fully believe it until I see it, because this team has been saying these past couple off seasons, we need to get younger, and then they haven't. But you have to figure this is finally the time, right? Like this has to be the time.
Right. What about, are we pretty sure Zach Ertz has played his last game? And what's your take on Jason Kelce at this point?
I think Jason Kelce should retire. What is he staying around for at this point? I love the guy. I hope he keeps playing forever in a perfect world. But I just think when you look at the way this team is trending and how he's really sacrificed his body for this team, I just don't know so much what's to be gained. Maybe he requests a trade. I don't know. I think he should just retire. I think that's probably the best option for him. Who was the other one you mentioned?
Zach Ertz.
Zach Ertz.
Yep.
Sorry, yeah, Zach Ertz. I think he thinks he's played his last down, and I think we all know that, really, right? He clearly wants a new deal, and he's not going to be getting that here. And Dallas Goedert is on the rise here, and I just don't think it's going to work out for either side, really, to be connected here. And look, again, I mentioned the cap just a little bit ago. The Eagles need to clear cap space, and trading Zach Ertz is one of the ways they can do that.
Philip Rivers retired today. So there's an opening at quarterback in that spot. Does that increase the chances maybe that Wentz would be dealt there?
Yeah, it's a logical connection, right? Frank Reich, Carson Wentz. Now, in that McLean story that you referenced, there's some sourcing there that doubted that, or questioned, I should say, if Frank Reich would really even want to work with Carson Wentz. And from what I've heard, that is not like a crazy thought and totally not baseless. So I definitely think it's not. Just let's look at the year Carson Wentz just had. He's like arguably the worst starter in the NFL. I don't think the Colts are like banging down the Eagles' door to get him after that kind of season. Not to mention the contract and the compensation. And then the other quarterbacks who could be out there, like Matt Stafford might be out there. I think that might be a more appealing option to the Colts than Carson Wentz right now and having to fix this guy. So I definitely think it's out there. It's going to be a consideration. I would expect the Colts to come calling about him and gauge the level of interest. But ultimately, I don't think they're going to make some huge offer to get him.
Well, Brandon, sit back and look in your crystal ball. Who you drafting? This team is full of holes. Devontae Smith sure made a show. I'm not sure he's there. There's some quarterbacks that are going to go early. Micah Parsons is also probably going to be on the board early. Who you like?
I think one of the two receivers is the way I'm really feeling right now. And it depends. I think one of them will probably be there. I don't know which one it'll be. I think, there was a lot of thought. I think that Jamar Chase was definitely the number one guy for most of the season. But then, Devontae Smith has that kind of tear that he did to end the year and wins the Heisman. And I think there's a real chance that he could go as high as 3 to the Dolphins, depending what they do there. So, but I think either Chase or Smith will be there for the Eagles. And I'd be pretty happy with either one, really.
Hey, I listen to WIP occasionally. They occasionally have had you on there in the past, Brandon. And I heard John Ritchie last week talking about Micah Parsons, basically saying he's not a great guy. He's a very good player, but that he's met him a few times and that he's, kind of obnoxious, wants to do his own thing. Have you heard anything on that end regarding Micah Parsons?
I have not in terms of in detail, but I have seen that there's some kind of questions there. So, yeah, I don't think the Eagles are taking a linebacker at number 6 overall to begin with. We all know what it's been since 1979 since they've done that, Jerry Robinson. So I'm not expecting that, and especially if there are going to be character questions.
I wanted to go back for just a second on Josh McDaniel. Is it true, or do you know that it's true? Did he take basically an entire staff down there for the interview process? I thought I had read that. That seemed kind of odd that it was an 8-hour interview and he took his big guns down with him. Unfortunately, he didn't bring Tom Brady with him because they were pretty good together.
Yeah, I don't know anything about bringing a staff in terms of actually physically being there or anything. But I think the buzz is that like McDaniels does have an idea of a staff assembled. in the case that he does get hired and is ready to go in that regard. And I think, again, if I'm looking for positives about Josh McDaniels, I think you can look at some of the assistants he's hired, or at least he had lined up for even that coach job. I mean, you look at their defensive coordinator, Matt Eberfluss from the Cowboys. I mean, that was a great hire. He was getting some head coaching buzz this year. That Colts defense was pretty good. So if you're looking for a positive for him, maybe it's that staff that around him could be a good one. But yeah, I don't know about that in terms of being there at the interview.
So there's only 2 head coaching jobs open right now, I guess Houston and the Eagles. Doug Peterson apparently is not going to be a head coach this year. Do you see him maybe becoming an OC somewhere, or is he just going to take a year off like he hinted?
Yeah, I think he's going to take a year off. I mean, I think there was Les Bowen. He told that he's leaning that way. And I think it makes all the sense in the world for him to do so. I mean, he's had to deal with a lot of BS really here with the Eagles. He's taken a disproportionate amount of blame, I would say. Not to say Doug was blameless for the Eagles' struggles, but look, I mean, there's a personnel problems here. There's, player problems here. Quarterback, there's a lot of issues here. And he was the one who had to answer for a lot of it in terms of being out there every week, multiple times in front of me and the media. So I think it would be great for him to get a year off. He deserves it. It's a pandemic right now. Spend some time with your family. He's getting paid through 2022. So why not take a year? I mean, he's getting paid anyway. Why not take a year off?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, we have been remiss to not mention Deuce Staley. Certainly hopefully he earns a shot at this job, whether he gets it or not. What do you think about Staley's chances of becoming a head coach of the Eagles or anywhere else?
Yeah, it's interesting because Howard Eskin on WIP said, I believe on Tuesday night, that he thinks it's kind of either down to Deuce Staley or Josh McDaniels. And a lot of players are apparently texting Jeffrey Lurie in support of Deuce Staley. And I think we've seen that publicly too. I know Brandon Graham, Brian Dawkins, Malcolm Jenkins, Torrey Smith, Rodney McLeod are among players who have publicly voiced they would like to see Deuce Staley promoted to head coach. Just before I came on the show here, I was reading an article from the great Paul Domowitch for the Inquirer, and he had kind of mentioned that I guess Carson Wentz, not always the biggest fan of Deuce Staley, or at least the way in terms of the intensity of being coached and being coached hard and whatnot. So it would seem that if Carson Wentz does have influence in this process, which I would say is a problem, then maybe Deuce Staley is not the most likely candidate.
Huh, interesting. Hey, before we talk a little Sixers, I want to ask you about this weekend's games. Should be a couple of good ones. The Battle of the Bays, you got Tampa Bay and Green Bay, and then the Bills and Chiefs. Who you like, Brandon?
I really like the Packers in the NFC Championship game. I think Aaron Rodgers this season has really kind of been all about him. I know the Bucks beat Green Bay back in Week 6, but I think Rodgers is not going to be stopped twice like that. I think he's on a different level right now. And that Green Bay has some playmakers too. I mean, you look at Zadarius Smith. This guy has been, I think, a crazy underrated signing. He has 29 sacks in 35 games for the Packers since joining them last year. I think they're going to be able to get after Tom Brady a little bit. And so I like the Packers in the NFC Championship game. And I actually like the Bills in the AFC Championship game. I know it's crazy probably to bet against Patrick Mahomes, who seems like he's going to play. We'll see against Buffalo there. But I just think the Bills, there's something special about them. I think they're hungry for this. I think they're going to want it more than the Chiefs did, just coming off the Super Bowl win and maybe some level of complacency a little bit there. I think Buffalo is finally going to get this thing done. I think they're going to win the Super Bowl.
Wow. There you go, Bill.
Wow. All right. Whew, you caught me off guard on that one. Actually, on both of those. But, I always look at it, Brandon, whenever we do our little picks. I never go against Brady and I never go against Rodgers. So here we are.
All right, let's switch it up. Talk a little basketball. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Sixers, Brandon, 9-4 as we speak. They got the Celtics this evening. They should be pretty healthy again very soon. Seth Curry not playing tonight, but hopefully back soon after the little COVID thing. How are you liking this new look Sixers team so far, Brandon?
It's encouraging. I think at the end of last year, I was just in such a bad spot with them in terms of not feeling confident, not feeling good. And they brought in Doc Rivers. I'm like, okay, I think that's a good hire. But I didn't think the coach fixed everything. They still need a good GM in here and get the roster looking better. And sure enough, they hired Daryl Morey. And I think he's done a great job in terms of putting shooters on the team. It's bringing a smile to my face. Like just thinking about it, like, oh, you guys can shoot on the team now. That makes a lot of sense. So it's been great to see. It's been great to see some of the young guys stepping up, like Shake Milton and Tyrese Maxey. I mean, it's just great. It's a really awesome vibe right now with this team in terms of the young guys stepping up and everything. My only concern, is just the Ben Simmons element. Obviously not playing up to snuff, and really just the bigger kind of concern I have is is this team doing everything to maximize Joel Embiid, who I think is having an MVP kind of caliber season? And I hope they do, and I hope they are in the end. And I don't know if Ben Simmons does that.
Bill, go ahead. I know you got to say something.
I do. I wasn't laughing at you, Brandon. I think that picture he threw up there was a setup because he had to throw Mr. Softy's picture up there. What is with this guy that he plays one good game and he's got to sit out a couple? Or he just has to lay out. You know what? They ain't winning nothing with him. They're not doing it. He's not an MVP. He can't be. He can't be when he doesn't show up every night. I was texting Chet the night he had, what do you have, 39 points or something like that?
40, 45 or 46, 40, I think.
And I said, I bet you he'll earn 2 days off, 2 games off for this.
Yeah, he took the weekend off. I know.
2 days off.
I love Joe.
Bill's a fan. Bill's a big fan.
Oh, I can't.
I get it. I get it.
Show up and play, man.
Oh, my. But
Sorry,
anyway,
I digress.
Getting back to Simmons, does it matter if he shoots the 12-footer or the 15-footer, or can they win with him with the game that he has? I'm not sure that they can, because, I mean, when they play, Boston or some of these other teams now, they know he drives the lane. He's not going to go in. He's just going to pass it back out. And I don't think that he's improved all that much over the last 4 seasons that he's been playing. His numbers are essentially the same. As a matter of fact, if I look at it, his average is down to 12.3 this year. It's always been around 15 or 16. The assists are about the same. The rebounds are up 1 per game, but he's just not shooting and not scoring. I need to see more out of Ben.
It's almost like Carson Wentz. It's the same kind of thing where it's I don't know that this player thinks they need to improve as much as we all see it and we think they do. And it's just it's super frustrating because this player's talented, they're capable, they have a high ceiling, but if you just look at, how they're not really improving, we haven't seen Carson Wentz improve. We haven't seen Ben Simmons improve. It's frustrating. And I think you can say shooting, whatever, it's about ultimately the bottom line. He has to become a better half-court player. Even if he's not going to become, some kind of automatic shooter or great shooter, you can at least get to the rim a little bit more and, and start making your free throws. That would be a good step in the right direction, but we can't even see that. So I am just kind of at the point with Carson Wentz, with Ben Simmons, where it's just I can't tell myself that I have confidence in him improving and thinking this is going to change because we're just seeing the same thing over and over.
Exactly.
Well, and the frustrating thing to me about that is, Brett Brown got a lot of heat because of what Simmons was doing, and Simmons is doing exactly the same thing now under Doc. Obviously it's the player. It's not.
Yep.
It's a whole different staff here, treating him differently and trying to work with him differently, but same result so far.
Absolutely. That's the key thing. It's, the coach can only do so much. The player, it has to start with them. It has to start with the player. A great coach can help, I think, but they can't do all the work for the player.
So the Harden trade didn't happen, of course, with the Sixers. Should they still consider trading Simmons if they could, do something with Bradley Beal or Levine or somebody? Can they consider trading Simmons at this point still?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't just, trade him just to trade him, but I mean, it's in a spot where they have to be careful though, because I mean, I just think you want to sell high, ideally, or get max return for him. And I just don't know what that's going to be. I feel like it's only going to keep going down because it's going to be the same player ultimately. Now he's having a bad stretch right now, so maybe it'll bounce up a little bit, but just talking about the bigger, the picture here. I think I cannot believe that Ben Simmons being on this team is maximizing Joel Embiid, and I think that's a problem.
Well, and I was actually checking to be sure I had the right number. He's still just 24 years old. There's a lot of growth in this guy. He's in his 5th season. This is his 5th season with the Sixers. So, I mean, he
took the first year off for the foot, though. He didn't play that first season.
That's right. So, I mean, he's still just a kid. There's certainly – I wouldn't be giving up on him. He's a 6'11" guy that runs the court. I think if he dishes it out, and they do have shooters this year, he's got a chance to open some things up. We certainly want to see him score more, but I'm certainly not ready to give up on the guy.
All right. I agree. Final question on the Sixers, Brandon. With the Bucks still the favorites, I guess, in the East, the Nets clearly much better with Harden. If the Sixers don't make a trade, how far can they go?
Yeah, I think they're maxing out potentially really at Eastern Conference finals kind of team. I feel like I don't have a good sense of the rest of the league yet, just early in the year and how the Nets are going to work out even to make it about the other teams as much and say, oh, the Sixers definitely can't get by that team. I'm looking at it from their perspective. And obviously, we need to see, for as much as I love him, and as Bill will say here, we need to see Joe, turn it up a little bit more in the playoffs and get, the most out of him and him showing up night in and night out. And we need to see, Ben Simmons not be this huge hindrance that he has been in the playoffs once they get to the second round, like he has been to this point. So until I see that, again, I'm not just going to blindly believe it. So I think, it might be, unfortunately, another second round exit unless they do, something big here and they shake up the roster and Morey kind of finds a way to maximize Embiid more. But right now, they're going to not win 0 playoff games like they did last year. I think they're going to be better than they did last year, but I still don't know that they're quite there yet.
Gotcha.
All right.
Hey, Brandon, before we run out of time, we wanted you to have time to talk to the viewers, let them know where all they can find what you're doing, what Bleeding Green Nation's doing. You've got all kinds of platforms, and you're a busy man.
You could say that, yeah. And thank you for having me on. Obviously, you can check me out at bleedinggreennation.com. Check out the podcast, Bleeding Green Nation, BGN Radio. Follow me on Twitter, at Brandon Gowton. You can check out the national NFL show I'm doing for that's called the SB Nation NFL Show. So check that out as well. I think that's about it.
Sounds good.
You have anything special you're working on with the draft?
Not thinking about it for a little bit, hopefully.
You got time.
Just because, yeah, the mock drafts are going to, we have till late April here. It's going to drive me crazy. It gets to about early April. And I'm like, all right, come on, let's just start this thing. Let's get the clock running.
There'll be about 20 mock drafts between now and then, at least.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We don't even know what order they're going to be in. All right, Brandon. Hey, thanks as always for coming by. We appreciate you. And let's do it again.
Absolutely.